The incompetent call it persuasion. Those who understand power recognize it as territorial dominance. This confusion serves a purpose. It protects the ego of those without leverage. When someone labels transactional authority as corrupt, they are justifying their own inability to shape outcomes. Machiavelli observed this pattern centuries ago. Humans moralize what defeats them. Commercial exchange is not negotiation between peers. It is the expression of hierarchy made visible through currency. When discomfort arises during a transaction, the source is not ethical violation. The source is positional weakness. The person requesting the exchange has placed themselves beneath the decision maker, seeking permission rather than commanding the frame. Respect never flows toward those who ask if they are allowed to lead. A man begging for approval to transact has already lost. Rejection inflicts damage not because of the refusal itself, but because it reveals absence of control. Every hesitation betrays doubt. Every unnecessary clarification signals insecurity. Every concession offered prematurely confesses uncertainty. And uncertainty breeds resistance as naturally as blood draws predators. Human cognition does not begin with logic. It begins with threat assessment. Weakness registers faster than reason. The nervous system detects fractures in confidence before the conscious mind processes words. The fundamental deception is this: commerce requires convincing someone of something. Convincing is what you employ when authority is missing. Authentic transactional power means positioning yourself as the only rational option. This explains why aggressive merchants fail consistently. Aggression is noise pretending to be strength. Machiavelli warned that leaders who substitute force for legitimacy announce their fragility. A desperate seller rushes, begs, applies pressure. Desperation repels capital like a magnetic field reverses polarity. Authority speaks quietly because it has no need to shout. Someone in control does not pursue the agreement. They architect conditions so the agreement pursues them. Value is assumed, never proven. Proof belongs in courtrooms, not in exercises of dominance. This also explains why selling something you privately question destroys outcomes. Internal doubt fractures external authority. The body cannot lie. Tone shifts, language softens, posture collapses. The buyer does not consciously decode this. They feel it. Then they withdraw. Price is never the actual obstacle. Authority is. Machiavelli understood that perceived legitimacy must exist before obedience follows. A ruler questioning his own right to govern invites rebellion. A merchant questioning his own offering invites rejection. Legitimacy must be felt before it can be articulated. Another comfortable lie traps the mediocre, the myth that people decide rationally. They do not. Logic justifies what emotion has already chosen. No one purchases transportation. They purchase status, relief from humiliation, or escape from inadequacy. No one purchases physical fitness for health outcomes. They purchase freedom from self-loathing. No one invests in education for knowledge. They invest for leverage. The merchant who emphasizes features speaks like a clerk. The merchant who addresses identity speaks like a king. Effective transaction is not about increased volume of speech. It is about exposing the cost of paralysis. What continues to deteriorate if the buyer remains static? What shame persists? What limitation extends indefinitely? Until this becomes undeniable, no exchange occurs. Fear vanishes when you stop requiring approval. Another soothing fiction must collapse, that rejection equals failure. Rejection simply reveals misalignment or premature timing. The elite operator does not seek universal validation. He filters, he qualifies, he eliminates. Scarcity is not manufactured. It emerges naturally from independence. If you require the transaction, the buyer owns you. If you can abandon the transaction, you control reality. Most approach commerce like servants, hoping to be selected. Those who control anything function as gatekeepers, determining who qualifies for access. They are not asking, "Will you commit?" They are asking, "Are you capable of receiving this?" This inversion changes everything. Commerce ceases being extraction. It becomes filtration. Capital is not seized. It is redirected. The buyer does not feel conquered. They feel chosen. When you occupy this position, calm, immovable, unconcerned with outcome, the final reversal manifests. The buyer begins defending the purchase to themselves. They construct their own arguments. They convince themselves. That is power. Commercial exchange is not manipulation. It is command of context. Until this is internalized, every script, every framework, every tactic collapses under pressure. In what follows, we confront the flaw that destroys more agreements than price or competition combined. The reality that most people have not sold themselves on themselves. And power never flows through someone who doubts their own legitimacy. First law, never transact what you do not endorse. Authority cannot pass through a fractured mind. Someone who doubts their own product cannot generate belief in others. This is mechanical reality, not philosophy. The most frequent error in commerce is not inadequate technique, weak language, or insufficient charisma. It is internal disbelief. Disbelief is fatal. Machiavelli would identify this as illegitimacy. A ruler questioning his own authority invites conspiracy. A merchant questioning his product invites resistance. People claim they need superior closing methods. What they actually need is alignment. Attempting to transact something you disbelieve forces contradiction. You communicate one truth externally while holding another internally. The buyer detects this fracture instantly. Humans are predators of inconsistency. They trust coherence. They punish hesitation. This explains why commerce feels corrupt to many, not because exchange itself is immoral, but because they are attempting to extract value from something they themselves would refuse to own. Their conscience rebels. Their physiology follows. Voice constricts. Language weakens. Authority dissolves into negotiation. A man offering luxury never apologizes. A man controlling scarcity never pleads. Only the uncertain explain themselves endlessly. If you secretly believe your product is overpriced, mediocre, or easily substituted, your behavior will reflect that assessment. No training overrides this. No script masks it permanently. Belief is the foundation. Without it, collapse is inevitable. Understand clearly, people do not purchase products. They purchase certainty. They purchase the calm confidence radiating from someone who knows outcomes improve with them versus without them. That certainty cannot be performed. It must be earned internally. Machiavelli warned that rulers relying on deception rather than strength eventually lose both. The principle applies identically here. You can deceive customers temporarily, but you cannot deceive your own nervous system. It will betray you through posture, timing, tone. This leads to a conclusion most refuse to accept. If you do not believe in what you transact, exit. Do not persevere through doubt. Do not fabricate enthusiasm. Do not hope conviction arrives later. Those are strategies of servants, not rulers. If the product does not genuinely improve the buyer's position in ways you respect, walk away. Find superior products. Create them. or serve different markets. Power emerges from defending something without hesitation. Once belief exists, commerce transforms entirely. You stop seeking approval. You stop explaining. You stop discounting. You begin guiding. The conversation shifts from, "Will this function?" to, "How rapidly do you want results?" This explains why elite operators appear relaxed. They are not attached to outcomes. They know efficacy is proven. They know not everyone qualifies. They are indifferent to rejection because rejection does not threaten identity. Indifference is strength. When you are convinced of your product, you no longer feel like you are taking money. You feel like you are redirecting it away from stagnation, away from excuses, toward leverage, status, or relief. Guilt disappears. Guilt only exists when you believe exchange is exploitation. Belief also generates selectivity. You stop attempting to transact with everyone. You qualify harder. You disqualify faster. This alone increases power. Scarcity is not created through tactics. It is created through standards. A merchant without standards is replaceable. A merchant with standards becomes a gatekeeper. This is the first law because it cannot be bypassed. Every dominant force in history understood this intuitively. Authority flows from conviction. The market rewards coherence, not effort. If you believe, others follow. If you hesitate, they resist. Second law: before you transact with others, you must transact with yourself. Someone who does not believe in themselves cannot command belief from anyone else. This is structural reality, not motivational language. Power does not pass through doubt. It leaks. Most fail in commerce not because their product is weak, but because they are internally illegitimate. They demand commitment, investment, and action from others, while privately knowing they themselves do not live by the standards they impose. This hypocrisy is felt immediately, not logically, but instinctively. Machiavelli warned that rulers who cannot govern themselves will never govern others. Self-rule precedes all authority. If you cannot keep promises to yourself, your words carry no weight. The market senses this faster than any human tribunal. The common delusion is that confidence emerges from results. Truth inverts this. Results emerge from self-trust. Self-trust is built through discipline, not affirmations. Every time you lie to yourself by delaying, quitting early, lowering standards, you weaken internal authority. When internal authority collapses, external authority disappears with it. This explains why some people know correct language, but cannot transact. Their words are accurate, but their presence is hollow. Buyers do not respond to language. They respond to alignment. When someone stands behind their words with their life, their habits, their posture, people feel safe following them. When they do not, resistance emerges. Selling yourself does not mean arrogance. It means credibility. You must know without debate why you are trustworthy, not because of titles, credentials, or charm, but because you do what you say you will do. Consistency is the quiet source of power. Machiavelli wrote that reputation is built through repeated action, not declared virtue. The principle applies here. You do not convince yourself with speeches. You convince yourself by waking when you said you would, training when inconvenient, preparing when no one watches. These acts are invisible to others, but they shape everything others perceive. Once you are sold on yourself, rejection loses its sting. You stop seeking validation because worth is no longer negotiated externally. Someone who trusts themselves does not collapse when someone says no. They adjust or move on. This shift is dangerous in the best way. You stop accepting weak prospects. You stop chasing people who hesitate. You stop shrinking your offer to be liked. You begin holding others to your standard instead of lowering yourself to theirs. The market respects this immediately. People follow those who live as proof of their message. They invest in those who embody outcomes, not those who merely describe them. If you want others to bet on themselves, they must first see that you have already done so. This is why selling yourself is the second law. Without it, belief in the product erodes over time. With it, even an average offer gains weight. Authority compounds. Third law, people do not purchase products. They purchase escape. The weak merchant explains features. The powerful merchant exposes consequences. This distinguishes clerks from strategists. No one wakes desiring a product. They wake desiring relief from shame, from limitation, from stagnation, from the quiet fear that their life is not improving. Products are rational objects. Purchasing is an emotional decision. Those who confuse the two transact slowly, if at all. Here is the common illusion. If I explain functionality, they will comprehend value. This is false. Understanding does not move people. Urgency does. Urgency is created by pain, not information. Machiavelli understood that people move faster away from danger than toward pleasure. The same law governs markets. A buyer acts when the cost of doing nothing becomes heavier than the cost of change. Your role is not to decorate the solution. It is to clarify the trap they already occupy. No one purchases transportation. They purchase dignity. No one purchases weight loss. They purchase the end of self-disgust. No one purchases education. They purchase leverage over a future that currently controls them. The product is merely the vehicle. The destination is psychological freedom. This is why elite operators ask questions instead of pitching. Questions are weapons. They force the buyer to confront what they have been avoiding. How long has this been a problem? What has it cost you so far? What happens if nothing changes in a year? Each question tightens the frame. Each answer sharpens the pain. The weak fear these questions because they think discomfort will scare the buyer away. In reality, discomfort clarifies. People are already uncomfortable. You are simply removing the illusion that ignoring the problem is harmless. Do not misunderstand this as empathy theater. This is not about being kind. It is about being precise. Precision creates authority. When you name a buyer's problem more clearly than they can, you temporarily control the narrative. Whoever controls the narrative controls the decision. Another lie must be destroyed, that people know what they need. Most do not. They feel symptoms, not causes. They blame surface issues while remaining loyal to the habits that created them. The merchant's true function is diagnostic, not persuasive. You diagnose the real constraint, then present the exit. This is why demonstrations outperform explanations. Seeing consequences collapse time. When the buyer feels the outcome, whether relief, confidence, or status, the decision is already made. Words only justify it. The merchant who focuses on features fights comparisons. The merchant who focuses on escape eliminates them. When the buyer believes you uniquely understand their situation, price becomes secondary. Competition fades. Delay feels dangerous. Do not offer hope. Hope is weak. Offer inevitability. Make it clear that change will happen with or without you, and that the only variable is whether they will control it or be controlled by it. This is not pressure. It is truth framed correctly. Notice what happens when you execute this well. The buyer stops asking about discounts and starts asking about timing. They stop negotiating value and start negotiating speed. This is the signal that you have shifted the frame from, "Do I want this?" to, "How soon can I escape?" This law is non-negotiable. Without it, you are transacting objects in a market flooded with objects. With it, you are transacting exits in a world full of trapped people. Power follows those who provide exits. Fourth law, do not persuade. Stand where the capital stands. The weak persuade, the powerful decide. Persuasion is the behavior of those lacking authority and must compensate with effort. Machiavelli warned that force reveals fragility. The same is true of persuasion. When you try too hard to convince, you announce that the decision is not already obvious. Here is the lie that traps most. I must get them to understand. No, understanding is not the problem. Courage is. People know far more than they act on. What they lack is willingness to confront the cost of staying the same. Your role is not to argue with the buyer. It is to occupy the position their capital wants to be in. Capital is not neutral. It seeks leverage. It flows toward outcomes, not explanations. When a buyer hesitates, it is not because they need more information. It is because their fear of change is louder than their desire for progress. If you argue, you side with their fear. If you reposition, you overpower it. To do this, you must adopt a ruthless frame. The buyer's capital is currently misallocated. It is sitting in comfort, distraction, or delay, places that do not produce growth. Your offer is not an expense. It is a reassignment of resources. When you believe this, persuasion disappears. You are no longer asking them to commit. You are guiding their capital toward its highest use. This is why elite operators sound calm when discussing price. They do not justify it. They contextualize it. They compare the investment not to alternatives, but to the ongoing cost of inaction. Time wasted, confidence eroded, opportunity lost. Compared to these, the price becomes small. Machiavelli wrote that the ruler who appears unsure invites rebellion. The merchant who negotiates against himself invites delay. Do not lower the price before it is challenged. Do not apologize for value. Apologies signal guilt. Guilt repels power. Another illusion must be destroyed, that empathy requires softness. True empathy is firmness. It is the willingness to say, if you do not change this, nothing will change for you. The weak call this pressure. The wise call it responsibility. Standing where the capital stands means you see the buyer's future more clearly than they do. It means you are willing to hold the uncomfortable truth when they retreat into excuses. You do not chase them, you wait. Silence becomes leverage. When done correctly, something shifts. The buyer stops defending their hesitation and starts questioning it. Their internal dialogue turns against delay. They begin justifying the investment to themselves. At that moment, the transaction is already decided. Notice that no persuasion occurred, no emotional pleading, no manipulation, only reframing reality. This is why aggression is unnecessary. Aggression is the language of insecurity. Authority does not need volume. It needs alignment. When your belief in the outcome is stronger than the buyer's fear, control naturally transfers to you. This law separates merchants who close occasionally from those who transact anything. The former chase agreement, the latter redirect momentum. Capital follows momentum. Fifth law, no is not rejection. It is incomplete awareness. The weak hear no and retreat. The powerful hear no and diagnose. Rejection only feels personal to those still seeking approval. In reality, a no is rarely a verdict. It is a signal. It means the frame is unfinished, the value is incomplete, or the consequences of inaction have not yet been made unavoidable. Most collapse at the first refusal because they misunderstand what is happening. They think the buyer has evaluated the offer and decided against it. This is almost never true. People do not reject what they fully understand. They reject what feels uncertain, abstract, or risky. Machiavelli understood that resistance emerges where clarity is missing. Subjects rebel when the ruler's intent is unclear. Buyers hesitate when the outcome is foggy. Confusion breeds delay. Here is the critical distinction. You are not being rejected. The product is not even being rejected. Ignorance is protecting itself. When someone says, "I need to think about it," they are not thinking. They are avoiding. When they say, "It's not the right time," time is not the issue. Courage is. The merchant who argues against these statements loses. The merchant who investigates them wins. The correct response to no is not persuasion. It is revelation. What does the buyer not yet see? Is it the mechanism of change, the speed of results, the cost of waiting, or the certainty that others like them have succeeded? Until this missing piece is exposed, refusal is rational. This is why demonstrations outperform explanations. Seeing compresses belief, a wrinkle disappearing, a result materializing, a system working in real time. These remove doubt faster than words ever could. Words ask for trust. Evidence commands it. The weak fear rejection because they tie it to identity. The powerful separate themselves entirely. They understand that commerce is mechanical. Frames are built. Information is sequenced. Outcomes follow. Machiavelli warned against reacting emotionally to resistance. Emotion clouds judgment. A merchant who takes no personally shortens the process by abandoning it. A merchant who remains calm extends the frame until the buyer either sees clearly or disqualifies themselves. This is why elite operators are patient. Patience is not passivity. It is confidence that time favors those with leverage. They do not rush to close. They allow the buyer to confront their own hesitation. There is another uncomfortable truth. Many buyers say no because they do not trust themselves. They fear committing and failing. Your role is not to comfort that fear, but to neutralize it. By showing them the structure, the support, the path, you remove uncertainty from the decision. Once awareness is complete, resistance collapses. The buyer does not feel convinced. They feel relieved. The decision stops feeling risky and starts feeling overdue. And sometimes, even after clarity, the answer remains no. This does not weaken your position. It strengthens it. Disqualification preserves authority. Power is maintained by refusing misaligned agreements as much as by closing aligned ones. Understand this law, and rejection loses its threat. No becomes information, not insult. Data, not defeat. Sixth law. Everything you want lies behind a yes. The powerless wait to be chosen. The powerful ask, and structure the moment so that saying yes becomes inevitable. Most people believe opportunity is discovered. It is not. Opportunity is granted, and it is granted to those who know how to move others to agreement. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. Power does not reward virtue. It rewards those who act. Here is the lie that keeps people subordinate. If it is meant for me, it will happen. Nothing significant happens without a decision, and every decision requires a yes. If you cannot ask for it or guide someone to it, you will live inside outcomes chosen by others. Life itself is a series of transactions. You transact where you live, who you marry, how you spend your time, what you tolerate, what you refuse. Those who fail to transact their direction are transacted upon by someone else's. The mistake merchants make is believing the yes belongs to the buyer alone. It does not. The yes is constructed. It is the result of context, clarity, and confidence applied in sequence. When people hesitate, it is rarely because they lack desire. It is because they lack certainty. Your task is not to pressure them into agreement. It is to remove every excuse for delay. Machiavelli warned that indecision is more dangerous than error. In commerce, hesitation is the enemy, not because it blocks the agreement, but because it preserves stagnation. The merchant who allows endless contemplation becomes complicit in the buyer's inaction. To transact anything, you must understand this law. People move when someone else holds the vision more firmly than they do. When you believe in the destination more than they believe in their fear, authority transfers. This is why elite operators speak in outcomes, not options. They do not ask, "What do you want to do?" They ask, "Do you want to start now or after the deadline?" This is not manipulation. It is leadership. Leaders do not present chaos. They present paths. Another illusion must be destroyed. Asking for the yes is uncomfortable. It is only uncomfortable when you doubt the value of the outcome. When you know the destination improves their position, asking becomes a responsibility, not a risk. Those who fear asking fear judgment. But judgment is the tax paid by those who act. The greater danger is invisibility. No one is rewarded for restraint. Notice something critical. The yes is never just about the product. It is about identity. Saying yes means accepting a new self, more capable, more exposed, more accountable. Many resist not because they cannot afford the investment, but because they fear the version of themselves that follows. This is why weak merchants stop at logic. Strong merchants address identity. They frame the yes as alignment with who the buyer already wants to become. When identity is engaged, resistance fades. And when the yes is spoken, momentum begins. Momentum compounds. One decision creates leverage for the next. Those who habitually say yes to the right things accumulate power quietly, while those who delay remain governed by circumstance. Understand this law, and you stop waiting. You stop hoping. You stop negotiating with fate. You begin directing it. Seventh law. The wealthy practice. The poor hope. Hope is the religion of the powerless. Practice is the discipline of those who intend to win. Most admire talent because it absolves them of responsibility. If success is a gift, failure is not their fault. Machiavelli would dismiss this illusion immediately. Power is never accidental. It is engineered through repetition. Commerce is not an art reserved for the gifted. It is a mechanical skill. And like all mechanical skills, it is sharpened through deliberate use. Those who wait to feel ready remain spectators. Those who train become inevitable. The poor believe motivation precedes action. The wealthy know action precedes confidence. This is why one group dreams and the other compounds. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Every conversation is a training ground. Those who transact anything understand this. They rehearse intent before speaking. They decide outcomes in advance. They treat objections as drills, not threats. The weak say, "I don't want to practice on people." The powerful practice on everything, on conversations, negotiations, even trivial decisions. They turn daily interactions into simulations. Where to eat, what to prioritize, what to refuse. Each choice strengthens authority. Machiavelli warned that armies lose not in battle, but in neglect during peace. Merchants fail for the same reason. They wait for the moment that matters, then collapse under pressure. Those who train daily remain calm when stakes rise. Practice removes fear, because fear thrives in uncertainty. Repetition replaces uncertainty with pattern recognition. Once you have seen resistance 100 times, it no longer intimidates. It becomes familiar, predictable, controllable. This is why elite operators are unshaken by objections. They have answered them before, thousands of times. Not theoretically, but in motion. Confidence is not bravado. It is memory. Another illusion must be destroyed. Training must be long and dramatic to be effective. It does not. 15 minutes daily outweighs hours of irregular effort. Consistency builds dominance. Intensity without discipline builds nothing. Those who practice understand that mistakes are currency. Each failure refines judgment. Each misstep sharpens timing. Those who avoid practice also avoid growth. And stagnation quietly becomes identity. The poor hope for better circumstances. The wealthy prepare regardless of circumstances. Hope waits for opportunity. Practice creates it. This is why transactional skill compounds beyond currency. The one who can direct decisions controls outcomes across every domain: career, relationships, power. Training is not optional. It is the price of authority. Eighth law: know when to be silent. The weak talk to feel safe. The powerful fall silent to take control. Most agreements are not lost because of a bad offer, weak timing, or strong competition. They are lost because the merchant cannot tolerate silence. He fills the gap with explanations, discounts, reassurances, each one eroding authority. Machiavelli warned that those who speak too much reveal their insecurity. The same law governs commerce. Silence is not absence, it is pressure. When a buyer has heard enough to decide, additional words do not add value. They introduce doubt. Over-explaining shifts the frame from leadership to justification. Justification belongs to the accused, not the authority. Here is the common misunderstanding. More information creates more certainty. In reality, information beyond the decision point creates confusion. People do not want every detail. They want resolution. The disciplined merchant watches for signals. The moment the buyer begins asking about logistics, timing, or implementation, the decision has already moved internally. At that point, talking becomes sabotage. Machiavelli understood that power often lies in restraint. A ruler who reacts to every provocation appears unstable. A merchant who responds to every hesitation appears uncertain. Silence communicates confidence in the outcome. The most dangerous moment in any transaction is right after momentum appears. This is when the weak celebrate verbally, restating value, repeating benefits, overselling. The powerful ask one question and stop. Have you heard enough to make a decision? This question does not push. It clarifies. It forces the buyer to confront their own readiness. If the answer is no, you continue. If the answer is yes, you close. Either way, silence regains control. Silence also exposes resistance faster than argument. When you stop speaking, the buyer fills the space with truth. Objections surface. Hesitations appear. The merchant who listens gains leverage. The one who talks loses it. There is another function of silence. It protects scarcity. Excess words cheapen value. When you say less, each sentence carries weight. The buyer leans in instead of tuning out. Attention follows restraint. The poor fear silence because they fear losing control. In reality, silence is control. It signals that you do not need the agreement to survive. That indifference is felt immediately. Machiavelli taught that appearing self-sufficient is essential to authority. Silence is the modern form of that signal. When used correctly, silence shifts the burden of action to the buyer. They must speak. They must decide. You have already framed the path. Their words determine the next move. Master this law, and you stop transacting with noise. You begin transacting with presence. And presence, when calm and deliberate, closes more agreements than persuasion ever will. Ninth law: no single mistake kills an agreement. The weak fear mistakes. The powerful assume recovery. Most transact as if the exchange is fragile. One wrong word, one awkward pause, one imperfect moment, and everything collapses. This belief keeps them tense, reactive, cautious. Machiavelli would dismiss this immediately. Power is not fragile. Only illegitimacy is. Agreements do not die because of mistakes. They die because of panic. A mistake reveals humanity. Panic reveals weakness. Buyers forgive errors far more easily than they forgive insecurity. When a merchant fumbles and then regains composure, authority increases. When he fumbles and collapses, trust disappears. Here is the illusion that paralyzes merchants. I've blown it. Rarely true. People change their minds constantly. They are not the same person they were an hour ago, a day ago, or even 5 minutes ago. Decisions evolve. Timing shifts. New pressures emerge. Machiavelli understood that rulers survive errors by controlling the narrative afterward. The same applies here. What matters is not the mistake itself, but how quickly and calmly control is reasserted. Names are forgotten. Demonstrations go poorly. Questions are answered imperfectly. None of these end an agreement. The merchant who remains steady signals resilience. Resilience creates confidence. The weak apologize excessively. Apologies invite judgment. The powerful correct and proceed. They do not dwell. They do not explain. They move forward as if the outcome remains unchanged, because often it does. Another lie must be destroyed. Pressure ruins relationships. Pressure handled poorly ruins relationships. Pressure applied with conviction accelerates decisions. Even when pressure misfires, recovery remains possible. Consider how buyers behave in their own lives. They walk away from an offer today, then return tomorrow when circumstances change. They reject a product, then buy it later when urgency appears. Human behavior is fluid. The merchant who understands this never treats a loss as final. This is why elite operators detach emotionally from each interaction. Detachment is not indifference. It is perspective. They know the game is long. One conversation does not define a career. One misstep does not define an agreement. Fear of mistakes shrinks presence. Shrunk presence invites resistance. Confidence, even after error, restores control. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors those bold enough to act and stable enough to endure misfortune. Commerce rewards the same temperament. Act decisively. Recover instantly. Continue without hesitation. When you internalize this law, anxiety disappears. You stop walking on verbal glass. You stop rehearsing perfection. You speak freely, listen deeply, and adjust in real time. This freedom is dangerous. It makes you adaptable. It makes you unshaken. And in markets where most freeze under pressure, adaptability wins. Final observation: the one who transacts well always stands above. Power is not taken by force. It is accepted through structure. The weak believe commerce is about tactics. The strong understand it is about position. When position is correct, techniques become unnecessary. When position is weak, no technique can save you. Those who transact well are not louder, faster, or more charismatic. They are calmer, more selective, more willing to walk away. They do not chase agreement. They shape it. They do not beg for trust. They radiate legitimacy. Machiavelli taught that authority must appear natural. The same is true in commerce. When you believe deeply in what you offer, when you govern yourself before attempting to govern others, when you expose problems instead of decorating solutions, when you stand where the capital should stand, rejection loses its sting. Silence becomes leverage. Mistakes become recoverable. Fear disappears. At that point, commerce stops feeling like work. It becomes alignment. You are no longer extracting value. You are directing it. Capital flows toward clarity, certainty, and conviction. Always has, always will. This is why the best merchants are rarely desperate. Desperation is a symptom of misalignment. The merchant who can lose the agreement controls the frame. The merchant who needs the agreement surrenders it. Transacting anything is not about domination over others. It is about dominance over chaos. You reduce confusion. You remove hesitation. You collapse time between desire and decision. In doing so, you assume responsibility, something most avoid. Responsibility is heavy. That is why few pursue it. But responsibility is also power. Those willing to carry it quietly rise above those who outsource decisions to chance, hope, or opinion. The market rewards authority, not effort. It rewards certainty, not intention. Those who master these laws do not need motivation. They operate from structure, and structure, once built, does not negotiate. Stand above, decide calmly, let others follow. That is the final law.